Chapter 42, The Shiva Sutras. Awake from a dream, it all came full circle. Back in reality, the whole story was a play of the imaginative thought forms that were internal, as this was a contemplation upon the eternal. And maybe a story is a reflection of all of our own inner characters. Or maybe stories have a way to teach us the hidden dimensions within our relative worlds. Oh, what would it feel like to wake up from a dream, only to realize we were asleep? To open our eyes and see that this whole process of life is not only about the me, but rather, what if we saw through our own reality to reawaken into spiritual unity? So often, it's a competition, even within religions. Everyone wants to be on top of the world, but surely there must come a time when we bring it to fruition. Are you going to ring the bell and end the meditation? Asked the meditator beside me. Meditation? This is not a meditation. Then is it a reflection? And what should we make of the story? You told us about Surya and Shruti and how the deceiver tricked the world to make it look like he held the nectar of immortality. But when he was confronted by the truth, the light overtook the darkness rather savagely. So what happens next in this allegory? Asked the meditator. What are you saying? That you think life is an allegory? What happens next is that we all have a choice, a commitment, and from this decision, we decide what happens next upon our journey. How can I tell you what happens when life is what we create together? The next part is that each of us make our choice, and I know that my commitment reconnects the light of my life to the devotion of the great spiritual endeavor. Then what about the aphorisms? Is this story like a great dream? Because when it all started, you spoke about the Shiva Sutras. What about the rest of them? And how did such a story come to life? Said the meditator. Imagine if all of our bodies were channels for the divine. Well, before we can work with divinity, we'd have to be emptied. The truth is about how we use our lives to be in service of humanity. To become a channel, we do not gain, but rather we surrender, let go, and allow the divine to use our mind, spirit, and bodies. Only after our individual wishes are empty can we become a pure instrument and emit a vibration, a song, or a melody of divinity. It seems that for 9 long nights, we have dreamt a dream, led by the threads of the ancient seers. For most of us, to dream is to partake of the evanescent, to float nightly in images of unreality, shards of memory, bizarre or even frightening episodes that may yield, without warning, to beautiful and alluring scenes. But to the luminous dreams of a seer, a perfected being, who can escape this chaotic fragmentation and separation, functions as a transparent filter for the apprehensions of truth. Such a seer recognizes the living truth of real freedom and makes a declaration, no different than a lion's roar. As one would explain, we are of that spirit, we are it, and within us lives the light of wisdom. We are Shiva, and such a ray of light shines bright when our spirit lives in a statement of attunement, a powerful, sacrificial translucence through which the great light can shine, while the ordinary, contracted beings exhibit only a resistive opacity. The spirit yields to the truth, even in dreams. And who is it that awakens from such a dream? Not I, but rather the spirit has dreamt such aphorisms. Only such a seer as the one living within all of us can discover the way to see into everything. Such a person would surrender their life to the light of the Spirit and behave ecstatically, to recognize the fundamental wisdom and expose even their egoity, which is then filled by the uncontainable consciousness we know as the Spirit, while others know this as Shiva. This illuminated light of ultimate consciousness dwells within the heart of all of us, and so when someone who is of the Spirit dreams, they become in tune with the divine reality rather than a worldly illusion projected onto the masses. Of course, a divine vision is projected onto the inner screen of awareness, but in the case of the Spirit, it becomes a map of divine guidance. Dreams, then, have revelatory characters through whom the paradoxical reality of the Spirit, of God, of Shiva, can be revealed through it. Such characters that arise through these stories are pieces of the Spirit, and we only appear to be separate from one another. Yet there is the Spirit woven throughout all women and man, and if we step back, we can see our conscious evolution of Spirit, which is woven throughout all matter. While the ordinary dreamer withdraws from the outer world, coiled into the oblivion of illusion, ignorance, and even confusion, we can choose to identify ourselves as a vehicle for the Divine Spirit, and so the soul can withdraw from the ordinary world of sense pleasures, where wholeness and absolute consciousness allow us to move freely within the universe. The body becomes like a vehicle in service of something far greater than the material self. Such movement unfolds and can reveal systematic revelations within the human spiritual, mental, and material systems to explain its own inherent structures, where we learn of inbuilt patterns. Such a dream or vision can lead us to discover coherence, where we relate with our nature of spirit, and so a seer dreams a sequence of transcendent truth and brings it to light through such a dream of poetic aphorisms. So many live unaware of the greatness within us. Yet if we become aware of the Spirit of God within our own hearts, we can dream the dream of the divine reality into the various states of consciousness, which can reveal the fundamental truths underlying reality behind our ever-changing states of consciousness. Thus, the emergence of this new absolute awareness produces what is called a siddha. A siddha functions as a lively intermediary, which is a channel of the Spirit, and becomes like a living spring through which the primordial and unspoken perception of the ultimate consciousness is woven into language. This is all seen through a sort of lens, through the inner awareness, and translated through the powers of consciousness. Such is the revelation that comes from Lord Shiva, the great and first siddha. His emergence began from a sequence within expanded consciousness, which was transcendent, in an effort to expose the truth of infinity as a translation on behalf of the Divine Spirit. Such rhythms have expounded sweetness with a honey quality within it. This nectar directs us to a source called Amrita, which is the nature of our spiritual soul within each of us. But still, we have a choice, a commitment. And so, how will we find the way to access it? And so from this choice, there is something we produce. And what must one do to discover it? Might we inquire about who is running this great show? And who is the one God behind such an ecstatic performance? Out of the divine nectar, this Amrita is a honeyed richness of our inner experience from that original spirit that dwells within us. These poetic aphorisms and stories are not merely dry philosophical elaborations, but rather are conceptual adorations of the Supreme, a slowly revolving vision of the Absolute. This dream is what we all share, and the light and dark aspects exist within each of us. Now, if we step back, we can see how we are united because of this. Within each of us, we live in a state of oneness, which is the original aspect of spirit, and this is a union of matter and God, which flows from the universe. Within all of us, there is a mystical place of peace, clarity, and contentment, and in such a story, we may call it a spirit rock, a mystical cornfield, or even a great mountain. To understand such a revelation, one must make the journey that we know as a pilgrimage, and this trek takes us on a path to the heights of our own spiritual mountain. And what does one find on such a journey? Asked one of the people seated in the cornfield. You may find that we are the world, or how we are the great mountain. But what I found in the dream and the story is wisdom, and so it seems it is time to end with the final aphorisms. Now the third light commences, which is called the vibration of powers. With a gaze upon the earth, I wondered what was real and what was a dream. Were we all awake together, or was the world still asleep? The powers we are about to describe are either generated by the spontaneous arising or by the recognition of one's true nature. And so, the first sutra of the third light says, the mind is the self. The mind is also known as the mental faculty and is represented as an organ of senses and directs intention through the formation of thought constructs. These thoughts are said to be mantra, or the power of the mind. But what happens if the mind's intentions are unfulfilled? Asked a person nearby. The next aphorism states, empirical knowledge is bondage. Such empirical knowledge relates to the object of the senses, and so is a form of mental awareness by attachment. This is bondage, as the veil obscures the mind's essential nature. Practicing detachment from inner and external objects, the perceiving subject is liberated from thoughts whenever they arise. In essence, the mind that is not free from the impurities of passion and ignorance is distracted by its interactions with sense pleasure, or one's own gratification with senses because of its attachment to it. The veil which obscures the light of consciousness has not been removed, and so one does not gain the power inherent to one's own nature. Thus, the root cause of all the impediments that prevent one from creating what the soul desires is attachment, the object of the senses. So what is it that obscures the external perceiver? A woman asked. The next aphorism states, Maya is the lack of discernment of the principles beginning with Kala. Maya in this case is like an illusion, which nourishes the net of darkness that covers consciousness, where Kala is said to be the individual soul, as it has limited power of action. An easier way to think of this might be that Maya is non-discrimination, and so rather than differentiating between one's true nature, one conceals it by making choices that push their consciousness into the unawakened and the unenlightened mind, into that terrible ocean of worldly existence which is so hard to cross. So how does one put an end that is brought about by this veil, which pushes the mind into the unawakened choices? She asked. The next aphorism goes on to explain that the forces are withdrawn in the body, And so dissolution of the various parts of our inherent being within our own body should be understood. These forces within us are made up of various energies that support the true self. The withdrawal of these forces in the body can lead us into a progressive absorption to understand our inner aspects so we can learn what causes our choices and actions. This process continues until we attain a body of pure awakened consciousness, rather than being led by our desires, our attachments, and the aspects of worldly life that pull at our senses. And so, by transcending the lower functions within us, we discover our own true nature, which dawns within, and this creates an outward extension to showcase the pure principles of existence. This can be accomplished by the withdrawal of the vital channels, the conquest of the elements, freedom from the elements, and the separation of the elements. Just as the householder is the master of their home by virtue of freedom, the true self within is the master of this body, and so we must understand the processes of energies within our body. Through this process, we are withdrawing into our true essence, and there it emerges through us unobstructed. Thus emerges the power of one's own freedom. This inner understanding includes understanding the breath, concentration, withdrawal of the senses, and the meditative consciousness called samadhi. So what is happening through the understanding of this entire process? She asked. A person would go on to attain perfection through the obscuring veil of delusion. When lust, anger, greed, or fear arise, if one has mastered that which is withdrawn into the body, then one is not swayed by emotions, but rather one may feel peaceful, happy, or joyful, even as delusions try to sway them everywhere. This arises when one's inner world is not swayed by the outside influences, and so this is true freedom and power. This is called perfection. Now, once this happens, the aphorisms state that a person who attains this perfection, after conquering the delusions which cover our infinite expansiveness, achieves innate knowledge. And so, the light of one's own nature dawns clearly through an infinite expansiveness, and this victory knows no bounds. This state is called waking up, or being awake, and this is when we are free from delusions. One who is awake should remain well awake, and not fall back into the trap of delusions. Waking is the second ray of consciousness. So how does the self, when it is free from delusions, behave when it resides in the body of one who is free in this life, especially among the world of delusions? She asked. The self is the actor. Such an experienced actor who knows of the delusions that try and trick the senses possess the correct state of mind, speech, physical appearance, and dress, and is said to act well. And so, the true self manifests itself in accordance within one's inherent nature everywhere, even through the most challenging emotions, as it can behave playfully. Thus one can delight everywhere with the light of their own true nature, through the power of their all-pervading consciousness. Such a person who has realized his or her essential spiritual nature is a ray of the true self who is only an actor on the worldly stage. And so, the true self turned actor dances upon the stage of the world to serve a purpose, and that purpose becomes a rhythm of creation, sustaining, or even destruction. In this way, one is acting on the stage of the inner soul. The senses of a person become the spectators of the acting as we witness them. The supreme conscious nature is free and fully awake, which do not obscure the true nature. But how does all this happen? You're saying this is an inner awareness of the body, and this is a process of who we are within. But how do we maintain this? Asked someone. We prevail as the pure state is achieved by the power of the illuminated intellect. This leads us to the light of the true self, which is our soul. Thus, the freedom is achieved. And when you are free, you are in union with the whole universe. It all happens through you. And a person who achieves freedom of knowledge and action can acquire control over everything in the universe, because the soul is the universe, and the soul is aligned within your very body and mind. In this case, the actor you think yourself to be is like a universal instrument. When this happens, by acquiring such power, a person does not become indifferent to life, but rather, they give their full attention to the active light of consciousness to be in service of the world. As this happens, one is established in the highest power of the divine feminine, which is called Shakti, as one becomes steeped in the ocean of immortality. Immortality was a big theme within the dream of our story, and if I remember correctly, both the demons and the angels wanted to connect with the eternal nature of reality. But how can a person dive into the conscious nature from which all things arise and practice the art of divine union? How does one bring it to fruition? Said the woman. The person who brings it to fruition is planted like a seed and effortlessly descends into the ocean of consciousness. Then comes the conquest of the delusion by means of a technique called disillusion. Through that merges the power of Shakti, or the divine spiritual energy. And when this power reaches a high degree of excellence, the person acquires a rebirth or a reunion, and this is fruition, which is a state of being immersed or born out of the most exquisite, eternal, and immortal ocean. This person can bring forth reunion in accordance with that measure or aspect of consciousness, which is creative, in which that person is established. What do you mean creative? She asked. In accordance with the measure of the creativity of consciousness, the person who is birthing it into fruition produces forms of objects or beings as desired by that person, and they bring it into view by producing them. So because of the power of creative thought, the person makes oneself an object of the knowledge, and the object is not separate of its own existence. He or she who knows this regards the whole world as a play of the divine, and is ever united with the universal consciousness, and without a doubt is liberated even while alive. Yet such truth cannot be seen by common eyes. So let me get this straight. There is a creative energy that goes through them, but it is not about someone. Rather, it sounds to be God's grace that is passing through them, which is part of the universal consciousness, she asked. The world is fashioned by the means of the Mother, who holds the womb of the Creator. We must turn our life and offer to God, who gives birth to creation. This is the Divine Father and Mother in union. In every way, what we call fruition is when the Divine Mother and Father come into union. Since the Mother gives birth to all, it is through her that the all-pervasive Lord fashions all things through the power of freedom. And as for the individual, the person who is born from their mother and father, the aphorism states that once limited knowledge is destroyed, so too ends the cycle of suffering through our births. Yet if one is living, we should be aware that there are certain dark forces in the world which carry their designs out and have tremendous influence upon the earth. Therefore, all people should be alert and should not fall victim to the solicitation of sense pleasure. And as we know, there are 3 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, but there is also a 4th. The 4th state of consciousness should be poured like an uninterrupted flow of oil into the previous 3. This is the perfection that pervades all 3. This 4th state is brilliant with the light of pure knowledge. This is a contemplative absorption that is merged and must penetrate with one's mind. When the aspirant sufficiently is steeped into this 4th state of transcendental consciousness, the experience of the transcendental consciousness persists even in the normal course of life, and so one acquires cosmic consciousness. To this person, the whole world is dressed in celestial light, a visible symbol of the bliss of divine consciousness. In essence, the elixir of immortality is this 4th state of consciousness and can cleanse the inferior states of the mind. As breath moves uniformly, one has equal vision to all things. At first, this profound 4th state of transcendental or cosmic consciousness is identified with only the mental, but in time, finally, it is actual. Now the person who remains in the body and achieves this lives in the pious act of service, and yet such beings can appear as mystics. We do not find such beings in great gatherings, but rather they may be misunderstood by much of society. Such a mystic or supernatural being mutters prayers or sacred formulas alone as a way to maintain the 4th state of consciousness, which becomes the divine union. Such a contemplation on God is the highest state, and so this becomes our mental mantra. The activities of the body is now the vow, or a choice and commitment within our life, which means we are in service of something far greater than our own being. And this sense of awakening is through the cosmic consciousness. But what is that cosmic or transcendental knowledge an expression of? She asked. It is a rejoining, or a relinking and reunion, to the group of Shakti, or divine energies, which one services as an agency of wisdom. Some call this the Holy Spirit, and this is what such a being is in service to. No longer are they manifesting for oneself or one's personal life, but rather the surrender of one's body, mind, and spirit to that which is divine. This surrender is in service of the ultimate, which is the true path of religion and yoga. When this happens, the universe and the person are not separate, and so the universe is the unfoldment of the person's power. Knowledge, wisdom, and the cause reside in the cosmic nature and the source of creation through someone. This all happens because someone puts wisdom into action and reduces all that should be abandoned. Such a person who abides in the cosmic nature is excellent because they rejoin the worldly play and liberation. When this happens, it is the mother of creation who governs such a person, and so they become the Lord of the Wheel of Energies. Thus, all powers of divine consciousness have functional potency and are said to be the rays of the divine light, which are all-pervasive. This union we speak of is the union of what could be called Shiva Shakti. It is a human woven within cosmic consciousness. Or we could label such a person as a devotee of God, who is a vehicle of the Holy Spirit, who offers up their life in divine service. As this happens, not only is the universe an unfoldment of one's power in the state of its creation, but also maintenance of the manifest state and its reabsorption are unfoldments of one's power. This conscious nature sustains and destroys the universe through the power of action and the power of will. And even though dissolution occurs, it is merely a plane being withdrawn back into consciousness only to reemerge from it. And so the spirit within us is always self-existing and self-abiding within everything. In spite of the way all things are ever-changing, there is not a break in the awareness of such consciousness, but rather, one considers pleasure and pain as something external. Since a person has transcended the stage where one is identified with the body, they are unaffected by pleasure and pain. Therefore, one is free from the influence of pleasure and pain. Rather, one is established in one's true self as pure consciousness, whereas one who is compacted into the mass of delusion, their soul is subject to karma as the consequence of their actions. As long as delusion persists, the self assumes the form of subject and object. As we practice the removal of such delusions, the individual soul can awaken to the inner state of divine consciousness into a stable state of being. When such diversity has been eliminated, the action gives rise to another creation. This new creation, which has not yet been manifested before, is a state of union, and this is the action of the conscious nature which possesses the power to do whatever it wishes. "What can you tell us about these powers?" she asked. The creative powers are proved and revealed through one's own experience. Such powers are of many kinds. From one's own experience in the matter of imagination and dreams, one has the capacity to create extraordinary things, and their power becomes well established. Such being the possibility, if one is orientated towards creation with a strong will, one can, according to their own wishes, create something common to all people. When such a person shines forth with the manifest power of their creativity, their willpower becomes like a wish-fulfilling tree. Now, of course, as there are the three states of creation, sustaining, and destruction, the whole goal becomes one of enlivening the essence of the universe, which arises out of compassion for all beings. As in the case of the states of mind, so also in the case of the body, organs of the senses, and external things, there should be a vitalization with the bliss of the transcendental consciousness. But if I hear you correctly, you are saying that someone is creating in regards to their own desires? Is that correct? She asked. When someone is in union with the ultimate state, such a person can create things according to their will. However, when that person does not feel the high consciousness or see their state of being as the one true self, they lose identification with it and feel a sense of imperfection and incompleteness. From here, on the account of feelings of want and desire, there is an extraversion on the individual who is carried forward from one existence to another. Only the person whose awareness is firmly established in the transcendental state can enter the state of desire as the cravings are destroyed, and from here, the individual soul ceases to exist. This is then liberation into the perfect reality. So the soul which was cloaked in the elements was not free, but can become supreme once more. Just as the sword is entirely separate from the sheath, which is only a cover for it, even so, the liberated one is entirely separate from the body. The body is only a physical covering for the spirit to carry on its function on the physical plane. The consciousness of a liberated one is not at all identified with the sensations of the body. Now there is a link which connects the soul, clad in the cloak of the gross elements, and this is the vital breath, which is life itself. The breath is what connects the two sides, and so it is by concentrating upon the breath that all channels of life are united. In this case, the breath brings life into us, which fuels the awareness of the divine to combine the union both inwardly and outwardly. May the soul use breath to merge into God once again. Within this whole process, is there a secret? She asked. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to teach anything. You just have to be who you are. A bright flame shining in the darkness of despair. A shining example of a person able to cross bridges by opening your heart and mind. But then why would you teach this whole process and end with the breath? The breath is so simple, but this whole process is quite complex, she expressed. The breath is given to all of us, and so what will we offer our breath to? We are given this life, and so the question becomes, will we live a life that is true? Some use the breath to merely exist. Others use their life force to multiply and procreate, while the wise use their breath and devote themselves to God. And so I ask, what will you do with the life force of your breath? It was silent for some time, as it was a worthy reflection. And so we all wondered, what will we do with this life that we are given? Will we use the universe to gain more? Will we use the breath to accomplish our individual desires and dreams? Or what is the best use of our breath anyways? In the silence, the breath needn't say a word, but rather the lungs filled up, then the breath was pushed back outwards. The breath is given to each of us, and what will we offer this breath to? Even though I wished and hoped for many things, my breath was in service to bring forth the truth. Sometimes we don't turn our breath into words to explain what we do with our life, but rather, actions reveal when we offer our breath up as a living sacrifice. If there was a secret, oh, I wonder what it would be. And I suppose the more you give away, the more we can assist humanity. Oh, what would it feel like to offer our body and mind up to the spirit of all life? Why, as far as I know, there are a few different kinds of personal sacrifice. Now, I'm not sure if this is something our mind can choose, or if words could even construe, but I believe we have a choice, a commitment, and this comes from a place woven within the depths of our soul. Of the 5 great sacrifices, the first is to offer and sacrifice yourself up for God. Next, we could make a sacrifice to honor our ancestors. The third type of sacrifice is to appease spirits and animals. The fourth, we could sacrifice on behalf of humans. And as for the fifth, we could make a sacrifice to realize the scriptures, knowledge, and wisdom. Yet there is a hidden type, and it is known as the inner sacrifice. It is to offer the consciousness within to a great calling, commitment, or cause. And so we could sacrifice the ego, our desires, our life, or even our breath control. But about the story, how does it end? Asked someone. You mean the dream of civilization? The one called Fruition? Yes, that one, they said. It all felt like a dream, and that Sundance was not so long ago. The dream of life is like a great illusion, and some chase it, some hold on, and yet everyone is forced to let go. Oh, it was a dream of epic extremes. And what should we make of the horrific pain and suffering? Why, all of life was a Sundance, a great offering. But if you told someone that we had to sacrifice ourselves from the beginning, they wouldn't understand its meaning without going through the experience. Life on earth is a Sundance. And so what is your offering? We are not this body, but rather we are given one. And material life is fleeting, yet life improves once we make a choice to commit to an offering. What we choose as our life's commitment is what we must honor. We must make a choice to our commitment, and if we honor it, life is more than just worth living. It becomes the pure jewel of existence. To offer our own essence in service of something greater creates a type of vibration or ripple that can alter and change the entire universe. Imagine a lightning bolt. There is a flash of clarity that can be seen, yet it escapes within a moment, and the memory feels like a dream. A light flashed and slashed through the air, like a knife through butter. It cut through the illusion, as if that instant was an auspicious reminder. Yes, there is something else out there, in energy or being that is far greater. And so, such an intuitive insight may remind us to honor our commitment and devote ourselves to something greater. Why, this spark of wisdom is a reminder, a jump start to awakening, to live out our commitment of service to the world. The Sundance is a great sacrifice, and every body is chained upon the earth and left out in the sun. And in time, the process of life and death always happens. Yet when we devote our cause to a great purpose or a commitment, the pain and suffering is suddenly worth something. Why, that's what this story was. An example of how to offer up what we love in service of the purity of existence. Yet how could words sum up some ending, when in fact, the dream of life is a great offering? Now I looked to the only ones who were left in the mystical cornfield when I explained. The dream of life is worthwhile when we are devoted. The whole point of life is that it's some sort of offering. It is given to us, and we give back to it. Some call it a creator, while we are the created. And so, since we are given this dream of life, what will you do with it? Why, there are many paths to take, and I will try to explain the end to the story we call Fruition. Now, as for an ending, it's more like a riddle to get you thinking. There exists a great triangle with 3 corners, and it is the essence of existence. The pinnacle could be called creation, while the other corner is called sustaining, and the final corner is called the destruction or recycling. When we breathe in, we enter into creation. When the breath is full, we sustain existence. And as we breathe out, we embrace the dissolution. This process revolves in a continuation, which spins existence like a wheel in the cosmos. Now the seed of life is planted, as a person is born, where the body is sustained upon the planet. And yet at some point, all of life becomes aware that someday there is an ending to it. And so the question is, what is our purpose while living? Can we work in service of existence? Well, it turns out that all living beings have a different answer to such a question. And so one way it could be categorized is in the personality types that could roughly group all human beings. First, at the pinnacle of the triangle are the alphas, who are the epitome of society. They are confident, assertive, goal-driven leaders that have a commanding presence. They thrive in competitive environments and are driven to reach success. The next level is beta, and such a person is friendly, nurturing, and empathetic. They prioritize harmony and cooperation in relationships. They are supportive and considerate, and are willing to lend a helping hand when necessary. Beyond that is gamma, who can be thought of as adventurous and creatives. These independent thinkers are not bound by the norms and embrace individuality as they march to the beat of their own drum. Often introspective, they seek deeper understanding of emotions and motives while they possess a wide variety of perspectives. After this, we examine the omega, often introverted and value personal freedom. They are seekers of solitude and self-reliant as they prioritize independence and are less concerned with societal expectations. They focus on self-growth and emotional well-being to navigate life's complexities, where they cultivate resilience and discover personal fulfillment. After this, there is Delta, who are known to be calm and dependable. They are steady and grounded, and excel in providing stability and support. Reliable and loyal, they value family and prioritize needs of their loved ones. Positive and peaceful environments suit their choices as they remain level-headed and work hard in the midst of challenges. When we group all the personalities together, it forms a sort of triangle, which is a structure of a sort of hierarchies that hold position within society. Now this is all happening through one shared aspect of life, and so we call this the process of breathing. Life is that breath, that spirit, which sustains between creation and dissolution, that in-breath and the out-breath. This is where life happens, and in this way, the nature of existence is like a triangle, and so we find our place somewhere within it. Now, as we find ourselves within this triangle of life, there are opportunities to go beyond it. We could examine the Zetas, who do not quite conform and reject societal expectations. They focus on individuality and personal autonomy, which seems to put them in a different orbit completely. And this is not right or wrong, good or bad, but rather, it can also be a path driven by feeling, passion, intuition, or different interests. In some ways, they find their way into the triangle of existence to function within it, but sometimes they function beyond it. Well, what are you getting at with all of this? Someone asked. There's one final piece to the puzzle within it, and that has to do with something that bridges the various parts of existence. It's a relinking process, like weaving, and so that's the missing piece we call fruition. What is it? They asked. I stacked 3 small stones upon one another until all were set in perfect balance. Take a moment to contemplate this. Look at it with complete focus and stillness. There, 3 small stones upon one another. Now what? Said a man. All that's left is to wait for the mystery of time. Keep your focus and gaze upon these 3 rocks until the moment one falls, and then the truth will catch you by surprise. What truth? Someone asked. The last piece of the puzzle, the world bridger. Some people call it Sigma. In old stories, some call them mysterious, while the yogis call it the Siddha. Vibrating beyond the threshold, it hits a chord that only the soul can sense. Not higher than the rest, but all of it together. Just wait until the moment the stones tumble. With all their eyes focused upon those 3 balanced stones, My feet backed away, step after step. This was not a retreat or evasion, willing to do anything for existence. Often seen as lone wolves, they thrive in solitude and avoid traditional social hierarchies, and may have detached perspectives on relationships. They are confident and capable leaders, but they lead by example rather than through explicit authority, and so they are called mysterious, those who live on the fringe within the dream of reality. By the time the group was out of sight, so was the veil between the worlds, and as much as I secretly wished for my own well-being, happiness, and contentment, I knew there was only one aspect of existence that would bring fulfillment. It was a commitment to be of service for whatever was needed for such a Sundance. Thinking back to it, I'm not sure if we had survived or died through it. Yet, I'm sure that what occurred was a great transformation through the process. Life must be lived as its own offering back to existence. That way, God will be proud of what we did with our gift. As the veil closed around my form, yet another chapter came to close. The story would keep them wondering, but now something within the nature of our reality had been exposed. You and I respond to language that didn't exist a few thousand years ago. Yet, if you open the window, the air speaks the same language it has spoken since the beginning of time, millions of years ago. And so I ask, who are you no longer willing to be? How do you want to be remembered? The breath can take you to whatever you imagine. So if life is a great offering, then will you show us your dedication? Now it is time we reveal it with action. And that, my friends, is called fruition.